Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this. And totally redeem yourself!
While Season 3 of From was airing, I got a sense from what people were saying online that fans were starting to get, let's say, antsy. There was a big stretch in the middle of the season where not much happened. A lot of people said they were giving up on the show, and that they thought the writers had no idea what they were doing. That this was going to be yet another show that introduced a bunch of mysteries that was going to end with no answers. Not me, though. I never lost faith. Nope. Not even for a second. But then came that finale, and wow. Just wow. Way to deliver on every promise. It didn't answer every question we had, obviously, because there's still more show left, but it gave us some major breakthroughs and proved to me beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is a plan here. Just in case you've never heard of the show and you're here just because you like listening to me talk, first of all, thanks for being here, but second, From is a show on MGM Plus about a small town that traps anyone who visits. You find your way there, and then when you try to leave, you magically end up right back in town again. The people unlucky enough to get stuck there try to figure out how to leave, survive the monsters that want to kill them, and figure out exactly what this place is. This show follows in the tradition of many shows before it as a mystery box show, where the main story is built around a big question that splinters out into a bunch of smaller questions, with everything eventually getting explained in the end. I've talked at length about all the many shows that tried and failed at this, and I think From has a solid chance of being the first show to really get it right.
We will watch your career with great interest.
We're now at the end of Season 3, out of 5, according to the creators. Things are starting to come together, but there's still a lot we don't know. Before Season 4 comes out, I want to take stock of every question the show has raised, and all the information we have so far, to see if I can guess where the story is going. Even though there's a lot we haven't been told yet, I think it's possible to at least suss out the shapes of the answers we all want. We need to start by... Okay, I know how the show is going to end. See, remember Martin? Martin has a military tattoo. Martin was in the military. Boyd was in the military. That means that Boyd is Martin. And all this is just a dream inside Martin/Boyd's head. Everything in town is just a representation of some kind of trauma that he faced while he was in the war. The monsters represent the enemy soldiers. The boy in white represents the innocent people that I assume he killed. The bugs under his skin represent the bug bites he got when bugs bit him out in the jungle. Mrs. Chen's pancakes represent... There are a lot of fan theories flying around about this show, and it's easy to let your imagination run wild waiting for the next episode. But we need to get a full picture of everything we already know before we can fit everything together. Let's do a rundown of what's been introduced so far. Like I said, the story takes place in a haunted magic town where people can't leave. You can find yourself there no matter where you started from. The main danger of living there is these monsters that look like humans that only come out at night, but can't enter any buildings as long as there's a talisman hanging inside. Quick list of main characters. There's the Matthews family, husband and wife Jim and Tabby, and their kids Julie and Ethan. There's Sheriff Boyd Stevens, the lead character. And there's arrogant software developer Jade, who showed up on the same day as the Matthews, and is far and away the best character in the whole show.
Do you have anything motorized? Like a scooter or something?
No.
No? Hey, this'll do. Thank you.
That's my...
I've only had him for a day and a half, but if anything happened to him, I would kill everyone in this room and then myself.
As characters explore and investigate, things get more complicated, and more weird, mysterious things keep getting added. To name a few, half the cast has visions that only they can see. A girl named Sarah hears voices that tell her to kill people. Jade keeps seeing ghosts of people who probably used to live here, and this symbol keeps popping up. Tabitha has these zombie kids appear to her over and over, and they keep saying the word Ankui. A few people have the ghosts of other characters who died come and talk to them. Jim gets phone calls from his and Tabby's infant son Thomas, who died before the show started. And a ton of people have seen the Boy in White, a figure who seems to be the main force for good here against the monsters. In Season 1, Jim is trying harder than anyone to figure out how to get home. He wonders how all the houses have electricity if the wires don't actually connect anywhere. He gets the town to build a radio tower to contact the outside, while Tabby digs a hole in their basement to find where the wires go. But it backfires during the season 1 finale, when the radio tower just picks up some creepy monster guy's voice who tells Jim to stop asking questions, and Tabby digs down into an underground tunnel where the monsters sleep during the day. Meanwhile, Boyd took Sarah to go exploring the woods outside town to see what they could find. They run into a weird place full of spider webs and find a tree full of bottles tied to it. It's also one of the town's many faraway trees, which teleport you places when you go through the hole inside it. Boyd goes through it and teleports to inside a dungeon in a lighthouse. This leads to a whole pile of new stuff in Season 2. Boyd finds a guy named Martin chained up, who warns him of more dangerous things to come, and then puts worms in Boyd's skin. Boyd starts seeing this music box and ballerina everywhere, something starts killing people in their sleep, and 3 characters end up in a coma after imaginary cicadas attack them. Boyd beats these monsters by putting the worms into the lead monster, aka Smiley, killing him, and then freeing the 3 comatose characters from their chains in a vision. Side note, Boyd had this whole plan of killing monsters with bullets coated in Smiley's bile, but then he used them, they did nothing, and it's never brought up again. Like, sure, okay, it didn't work, but there's no scene of Boyd acting disappointed that they didn't work. It feels unresolved. In a similar way, he says he wants to come up with a plan to catch a monster in Season 3, and then just doesn't. Both these plotlines just fizzle out and get dropped. Super weird. One of the bigger pieces of the puzzle is Victor, who's lived there longer than anyone. Victor is our resident character who knows all the answers but won't reveal what information they know because of reasons. He never wants to talk about anything important because it's either too upsetting or a traumatic memory that he blocked out.
You don't understand. You shouldn't be asking these questions.
I don't want to talk about that.
No, I said no!
Victor!
I said no!
Oh, you almost had it. You gotta be quicker than that.
When he was a kid, the monsters killed everyone in town except him, including his mom Miranda and his sister Eloise. He only survived because his mother hid him. She apparently had visions of the children just like Tabby's been having, and she tried and failed to save them. One of the residents who died around this time was a man named Christopher, who had a puppet named Jasper, and who started seeing visions of things too. He was obsessed with the same symbol Jay keeps seeing. It's unclear how he fits into things, but Victor seems to think he was important somehow. Tabby goes to the lighthouse to try and save the children, where the boy in white pushes her out a window, and then she wakes up out in the world, in Camden, Maine, the town where Victor was born. She goes to find Victor's father, Henry. Tabby learns more and more about how she and Miranda had a connection of some kind. Both of them had dreams of the town before they got there, and both of them made the exact same bracelet for their husbands. Miranda also made a replica of the bottle tree, and Tabby goes to see it, but she and Henry end up back in town before she can. A major plotline in Season 3 focuses on Boyd's son Ellis and his wife Fatima. Fatima gets pregnant, but it becomes clear that she's not having a normal baby when she starts craving rotten vegetables and human flesh. Meanwhile, a character named Elgin seems to have a special connection to the town. He had a dream about it before he got there. He starts seeing visions of a zombie woman in a kimono, who tells him Fatima's baby is super important. So he kidnaps Fatima to make sure she gives birth to whatever monster is inside of her. That's pretty much every big question introduced during the first 3 seasons. Questions pile up without a lot of answers. But the Season 3 finale was a massive breakthrough. Let's go through every answer we got in that episode alone. Tabitha and Jade finally figure out what the deal is with the kids and Ankui. It starts with the bottle tree. They figure out that the numbers in the bottles on the tree are music notes that spell out a lullaby. Now here's the big lore drop. That lullaby is a song Jade and Tabby used to sing to the kids. They are reincarnations of people who lived in the town. Tabitha used to be Miranda, and Jade used to be Christopher. And they've reincarnated over and over, and come back to the town over and over, to save the spirits of their dead/cursed kids. Ankui apparently translates to remember. Tabby explains that all the monsters were once people, who made a deal with whatever entity controls the town to trade their children for immortality. She doesn't get into details, but it seems like the 2 of them were part of that group and were the lone dissenters. Also, Fatima gives birth, and her baby turns out to be Smiley, reborn. Finally, Jim has an encounter with someone new. This guy, who we're calling the Man in Yellow.
Your wife shouldn't have dug that hole, Jim.
Your wife shouldn't be digging that hole, Jim.
The previous episode, we're introduced to the idea that Julie can time travel in some form. When Boyd was at the lighthouse, an unknown person threw him a rope, and it turned out that was Julie. She can time travel, but anything she does in the past has already happened, and she can't change anything. Anyway, in this final scene here, a version of Julie from the future shows up to try and save Jim from what's about to happen. But she can't change what's coming, and the man in yellow rips Jim's throat out as the episode ends. The man in yellow is called that because he's got a yellow jacket on. But did you catch this? In the first season, Ethan has a yellow jacket on. Ethan is the man in yellow. He's the head of a government project that's running an experiment with the town. By using time travel, like I said, From is a mystery box show. And when it comes to mysteries and reveals in mystery box shows, they have to follow certain rules.
Jesus Christ, you don't know the rules?
I've been at this a long time, and I've noticed clear patterns that mystery box shows follow when it comes to setting up and paying off mysteries. It's only by understanding these rules that you can make any accurate predictions about the story. Here's the first rule. You're not supposed to solve a mystery box mystery ahead of time. Well, you're supposed to try, but you're not supposed to be able to figure out the answer before the show tells you.
Tell me you figure it out.
Oh, I did. And the answer is 12.
This isn't like a traditional whodunit. In a murder mystery, the clues are sprinkled throughout the story so that the audience can solve it before the main character tells them. Mystery box shows don't do that. They will always withhold critical information so that it's impossible for the online hive mind to spoil the ending beforehand. I'm sure there are a bunch of theories out there that involve going through the show frame by frame and picking out obscure specific details that nobody noticed the first time around. But that kind of approach won't solve a show. The writers know people do that. They know that any clue they slip in will be found, so they won't include anything that's actually helpful towards predicting the ending. All season, I saw post after post of people trying to figure out what Ankui means by trying to break down the etymology and finding similar words, but that was never going to work. Even now that we know it means remember, there's still no way we could have reverse engineered that meaning without the writers telling us. Because if we had, it would have taken the punch out of the season finale lore drop. The only way to actually guess answers ahead of time is to look at things from a Doyleist point of view. What answers would make the most narrative sense and be the most narratively satisfying? That's what these rules are meant to uncover. Here's another rule. Your first guess is always going to be wrong. It's the writer's job to surprise you. If the reveal is exactly what you expected, that's bad writing. For example, here's a bit of a softball for my first prediction. The town is not a government experiment of some kind, because that would be really boring and underwhelming. This was probably one of the first theories that 99% of people had when they started watching. The explanation of what's going on will be supernatural. Maybe the government on the outside knows the town exists, but they weren't involved in creating it, similar to the Upside Down and Stranger Things. In a similar vein, I'm confident in saying that there is no mole. There's no character in town who's in on it, because we already spent long enough with Jim and Randall wondering if that was the case. Next rule. With any fictional mystery, as soon as a character shares a theory out loud, that theory is dead, because it would be super lame to have a character randomly guess the right answer ahead of time. As a show like this goes on, it builds more and more hype about eventual answers, so the final reveal needs to be big enough to match that hype. From has already escalated so much in 3 seasons that these answers are going to be big. If we look to shows like Lost, Dark, and Manifest, where From is pulling inspiration, all of them had lore that eventually built up to cosmic clashes between the forces of good and evil. I think From will be similar. Good versus evil. The boy in white versus the man in yellow. Here's my next prediction. The man in yellow is going to be the big bad on screen for the rest of the show. But he's not all-knowing. He's not really the final boss. He's only a representative of some vaguely defined force of evil that will be described but never shown, because it doesn't have a physical form. Same with the boy in white. He's an avatar for the forces of good, whatever that actually ends up meaning. With a story like this, there's a limit to how far you can go with questions and answers. You eventually get to the point where you're asking, who created these supernatural forces of good and evil? What's the divine force that set all this in motion? And there's really no way to answer that in a satisfying way. It's the same as in the real world asking, if God created the world, who created God?
Every question I answer will simply lead to another question.
As long as we learn how Fromville was created, for what purpose, and by whom, the answers will probably stop there. No need to get into the weeds about why evil exists. I keep saying that the story is going somewhere, that we will be getting answers. But we have to be realistic about what that looks like. I want to do some managing of expectations. Even if we are getting answers, that doesn't mean that every teeny tiny question is getting a specific explanation. Like, we probably won't be told how faraway trees were created, because they're just a part of how the town works. Not every supernatural element needs a backstory. They can just be a thing that exists. We also probably won't be told why the monsters left Randall alive when they captured him. The show basically already told us it was to mess with Boyd's head, and have Randall around as a living reminder of his weakness.
Why'd they leave him alive? Why not just kill him?
When the sun's up, they want us to remember what's coming at night.
Even though that's not 100% confirmed, we don't need them to over-explain it. Also, we're never going to see the music box, ballerina, and Locust killing people in their sleep again. The show only told us this very briefly, but all of this happened as a result of one specific creature that Boyd released when he met with Martin.
It's laughing at you.
What?
For bringing it back to town. For setting it free.
The Season 2 monster, as I like to think of it, is dead and gone, and all the stuff it did during Season 2 is over and done with. So don't be surprised when the show ends and it feels like the ballerina never got explained. Because it did, they just never put it into words. I'm going to keep comparing it to Lost and Manifest, because all three shows feel very similar in this way. Both of those shows gave pretty sophisticated answers to their main mysteries, but because those finales didn't explicitly state everything, people didn't understand them. If you want to understand what happened in the show by the end, you'll need to do some reading in between the lines and make some assumptions. Like, I saw a concerning amount of people wondering if this was Julie from the future or not. And it's like, yes, obviously yes. How is that even a question? She has a different hairstyle, she talks about stopping a bad thing before it happens, and we just saw Julie figure out how to time travel 20 minutes ago. Do you really need her to say, I'm Julie from the future? No. Trust yourself enough to figure out what the show is telling you. Whenever we do get our big final explanation, there will be pieces of answers that are implied but not stated. For example, next prediction. All the ghosts of dead characters, they're being sent by the forces of evil to manipulate people. They're not really the people who died. I don't think the show is ever going to say this. It'll just be something that's obvious and implied once we get more info. Heck, it's basically implied even now. If you look at all the conversations with ghosts that have happened, a bunch of them involve the ghosts telling people not to investigate, not to try and do risky things that might lead to a breakthrough, even if it would be an in-character thing to say. Look at Father Kotri in the season finale.
You know there's no coming back from this, right? You said that you weren't gonna let this place break you. If you do this place is one.
Speaking of people who have died, Jade said something really interesting in the finale that's easy to lose track of between all the other lore drops.
And our thoughts, our memories, our souls, if you believe in that sort of thing, they're made of energy. And that energy, maybe here, that energy, I don't know, maybe it lingers.
The way this line was presented set off some alarm bells for me. Generally, like I said, when a character in the story shares a working theory, that theory is wrong. But this is different. When a character intuits an explanation for something that feels out of left field, but they act weirdly confident about it, those theories are usually right. I've seen this before, again with Manifest and Lost. A bunch of major explanations in both of those shows were given like this, and because it was never confirmed that they were right, people didn't know that they were explanations.
We're just a bunch of random people. Some good, some bad.
A statistical sample for a divine experiment.
If Jade is right, that the town traps the souls of people who die here somehow, then these ghosts really are the spirits of the people they represent, only they're being puppeteered by the forces of evil. The whole time I was watching the show, I kept getting this feeling that a lot of the characters who died shouldn't have died. What I mean is that they died before they could finish whatever story arcs the show set up for them. There's Tilly, who in hindsight was obviously a red herring who acted weird so that we would theorize about her, but still, her getting stabbed by Fatima was pretty anticlimactic. And as he died, Father Kotri literally said,
"It doesn't end like this."
I just get the feeling that we haven't fully seen the last of a lot of dead characters. Their spirits will be back at some point to factor into the final battle. Which brings me to my first big swing. Every prediction I've made so far has been pretty vague and safe, but let me call my shot here. Jim isn't gone. Note my choice of words. I'm tempted to say that he isn't dead. A main character getting killed in the last scene of a season finale is giving me major Jon Snow vibes, and there's reason to think it's a fake out. But I do think he really died here. However, he's too important of a character to just disappear completely. What I actually think will happen is that a big chunk of season 4 will follow Jim's spirit, as we're shown what happens to souls in this place after they die. Julie and all the other living characters will think of him as dead, which is why Julie comes back to try and save him. But meanwhile, his ghost will look on, wishing he could return to his family, and doing everything he can to help them from this side of the veil. Side note, you know who totally isn't dead though? Eloise. I'm not the first person to think of this, but when Victor brings his dad to her grave, he goes out of his way to say that he didn't actually find her body, just bits and pieces. We know Miranda died because she reincarnated into Tabby, but Eloise is totally fair game to show up alive somewhere down the road. I want to talk more about the season 3 finale. I'm so excited about that episode, not just because it was really cool and gave us answers, but also because it knew exactly how much to reveal and how much to hold back. Every answer we got in this episode answered a big question, but it also led to another question that's more specific. So we get a progression, while still having what feels like the same amount of mystery to be solved. What is the evil force pulling strings in town leads to, who is the man in yellow? What's going on with Fatima's baby leads to, how did Smiley come out of her? Why do Jade and Tabby keep having visions leads to, how and why do they keep reincarnating? What are the monsters leads to, why did they sacrifice their kids for immortality, and who did they make that deal with? The episode ended as Tabby and Jade were explaining what they remembered, so we got a brief explanation lacking in a lot of details. These new questions won't be answered in Season 4 Episode 1, of course. We still have 2 seasons of show to fill, but these are the questions that will drive Season 4. We can't have Jade and Tabby info-dumping everything right away, so what I assume will happen is that in the season premiere, we'll find out that they only remembered a tiny piece of their past lives. Throughout the season, they'll remember more and more, so that we'll get a continuous drip feed of new information. Here's my next big swing. Fromville is ancient, thousands of years old, and it used to be a paradise before it was corrupted somehow. Whatever the monsters did to sacrifice the children ruined everything and allowed evil to take root here. It's like I said earlier, these answers have to feel big, and a reveal like that would go a long way. One more solid prediction. Boyd's gonna figure out how to capture and or kill the monsters this season. They kept making such a big deal out of him doing this that it has to pay off soon. Plus, making the monsters killable changes the stakes and creates a new dynamic for the end of the show. It's still too early to make broad, accurate predictions about the ending of the story, but I can make some guesses about what kinds of answers we could get in Season 4. So to end things off, my final predictions are that Julie is the key to everything. Remember that part in the second episode when the monster said,
Julie,
Hey, what are you doing?
don't you recognize me?
That's the smoking gun. The monster recognized Julie because Julie is the monster. The monster is Martin, and Julie is Martin. By using time travel... No, that's not my actual prediction. Well, actually, here's where I think Season 4 is going. We're gonna get a lot more information about things happening in the town in the distant past. Jade and Tabby will remember parts of their past lives in bits and pieces. We'll find out that they reincarnated a lot of times. Like, a lot. To supplement this, Julie will do more time traveling and actually visit some events that have been described or hinted at. Maybe she'll even meet the boy who asked if she recognized him and get to know him before he became a monster. And while all that's happening, Jim will be fighting to return to the land of the living. In the process, interacting with all kinds of people who died here, giving him more information on what happened to them. This will build to an understanding of just how old the town is, and how it used to be a great place before the man in yellow and the forces of evil ruined it. And the boy in white is trying to restore it to its former glory, or at least put it to rest. I don't think his goals really align with the human characters that much. He's probably ready to cause a lot of collateral damage for some divine greater good. Along the way, Boyd and the others will finally figure out how to kill the monsters for good, giving them a way to fight back and setting the stage for a final confrontation in Season 5. I know that doesn't really offer up a lot of specific possible answers, but I don't want to overpromise. I'd rather be right in small ways than wrong in big ways. Anyway, if the writers are doing their jobs right, I shouldn't be able to predict the answers. Like I said, the whole fun of mystery box stories is to be surprised with explanations you never expected. But I feel pretty good about my predictions for the general shape of the next season. I can't wait to see if I'm right about Season 4, when it comes out in 2026. It's gonna be a long wait. If you need something to fill the void in that time, check out the other videos on my channel. I talk a lot about other similar shows that you might like. And when Season 4 does come out, I'll be ready to make another video checking back on these predictions and piecing together what could happen in the series finale. See you then.
I can't see it. I don't understand this. I'm trying to show you, but I can't see it.
Well, okay, buddy.
No.
No.
It's all right. Hey,
Come on.
Hey,
Let's do it.
I gotta. No.